Stephen, for having me here today. I would like to introduce my poetry or my poems a little bit with my experience through travelling. And it all started, of course, everything starts at a beginning that cannot be repeated. And as a kid, there was one piece of writing that really interested me, and it was A Stranger by Camus. I was fascinated by that book, and I didn't know why. And then I was also very impressed by the character of Hamlet, the hesitation, the doubt, the in-betweenness from one place to another place, from one thought to another thought. And, well, I shouldn't say that, teaching creative writing, but reading can be dangerous. Because it created a kind of hesitation and also wanting to be somewhere else while you are somewhere. And someone told me that there is a saying in Japanese also, that if you go into another culture, and my grandmother was French, my parents are Catalan, and of course we live in Spain. My great-great-granddad, he lived in Indochina, and his stories also influenced my attitude at the time. But there's a Japanese saying that says, if you approach another culture, if you travel into another language, yeah, you become a bat. Yeah, so I think I'm a Batman, but not quite like that. Yeah. You're no longer a bird, and you're no longer a mouse. You become something else. And it's true. You start seeing things in a different way. I mean, you sleep upside down, those kind of things. But you think differently. You try different angles. And this is what I call sense. And sense in Spanish and in French and Catalan, it has this idea, more than meaning, the direction that you take. So for me, in these three pieces that I extract from three pieces that I'm going to read, it has this idea of direction. And of course, sometimes I like this. Okay. But you can hear me all right, yeah?
Yeah.
Okay. Good. I think I'm not talking enough. So, just to finalise this introduction, the travelling, moving from here to there, yeah, it comes down to you're here and the there is another here. So when I first moved to London, I worked for 1 year for an airline, and I also worked for the in-flight magazine. The great thing, I hated the job, but the great thing is that I could fly. One day I could say, where am I going? You could just go to the airport and say, where am I going? And the first year I took 41 flights. And it was strange. It was strange to say, tomorrow I'll be in Georgia. Yeah, why not? And suddenly, when you arrived at one place, it was not that you suddenly were A, B. There was a kind of transition, and the flights were fast, and you didn't remember the experience of getting onto the plane and going to the airport. No, you didn't. But there was always arriving. There was always dreamlike. And that dream had a kind of memory that interested me a great deal. Okay, I'm going to read some extracts from a book, which is a verse novel, and it's traveling through text. Yeah, and the verse novel it's been influenced by my experience with a community in Ecuador, and the experience of someone who lives in a city and wants to go to his roots and understand, what being indigenous, and studies poetry, so wants to go to the source and find out, what's the real oral poetry. But when he arrives there, he realizes that there's an erasure, and there's deforestation, and things are not what he was dreaming, or expecting. So this is it's entitled "Within the Sound of a Parrot's Voice," and I've chosen parrot because not in the sense of repetition, but more in the sense of echo, and also because there's something very similar, with poets and birds, or with human beings and birds, and it's that. Did you know that birds, when they are born, they have to learn the songs? It's not that suddenly they can sing, "Hey, I've got a song." No, they've got to work towards it. Yeah, so they've got to learn a song. And depending on where they live, they have different accents. Yeah, and they have different ways of communicating. It's been found out that birds that live in the cities speak a lot faster. Sing a lot faster. Okay, so this is a story of someone who goes into the forest, into the jungle, because he has a recurrent dream. And he says, well, I'm going to go there and clarify this dream. And he's surprised what he sees, all the deforestation, all the lies that people give to say, it'll be fine, it's for you, and through a lot of my work with some communities, the story is always the same. They try to say, we'll build a 5-star hotel where they can sleep under 10,000 million stars. They have that hotel. So they finally sign a paper, and then there is reasons to destroy the community, to break it apart, and so on. So parrot here is not someone who repeats in a boring way, but someone who repeats a message. And also parrot is someone who learns a new song. And the person who influenced this piece, he's not a shaman, he's a medicine man, and he said to me, he knows so much about plants, and he said, do you know how I learned about plants? Not by studying the plants, but by listening to the parrots. Because the parrots, the only way to understand the language of plants is when the breeze is blowing, suddenly, the parrots start repeating, the rustling of the leaves, and I can get the information. So let me read some extracts of this. Before text, it happened, or it happened is text. Recurrent dream when death is surface, sideways, pause. Decision reversed. Oral poem that tastes gestures and indicates handlines, sculling the grateful grasp. The streaming conduit, pause, static water that gesticulates till night profound. Riverbird sense to future past tense. A prediction. The dust of moth, a drizzle of poems articulated. Then the dream becoming memory, stepping backwards to read book full. River, recurrent dream. In the weaving towards oneself lives a woman. Always the dream lopsided, rouged and lip red. She reaves through the night, fixed eyes in the evening tinge, to stare south, attracting north, waves in the east-west bound. Her hips now wave, thighs then face my knee-deep sleep, above, below, the afternoon eyelids a tide, recover the moonset again. Where my hands warm too soon till she now would hold in some early time then noon notes if they had been. She reads, follow these lines and stride along them. Noise of seeds. This is admitted to be impossible, couple noise amazed. Yes, see-through statements, awake-rooted filaments that tingle fragments. Your limbs will permeate the land skin. You'll be happy. I see children on your fingertips. Narrated the parrot, the ball between you may not stray. Palmistry groups say. She releases my hands to suspend them in mid-air. I keep praying the moment suspended her touch lingers, but palms come suddenly blank, impressed and printed. In voice distance, she's laughing, sprinkling my lifelines over the ground. Earth shadows pour out round us. It bleeds the sand-time edge. I ran after towards her, repeating a stumble into my own web-like frown. Fixed eyes, this pretext of woven paths reprinted. Repeat the erasure, repeat the unknown, repeating the unheard silence, the membrane before the awakening sweat. Its recurrence, the parrot tree, the salivating tree, time breath. The verse that swayed to hand the light back, the sound, sun, repeat. Okay, and this is when Nestor, who is the main character, arrives at one of the villages. The whistle made by a curious bone is not dead. I arrived at where I am from there here. Who lives here? Memories? Due only to those who remember the limbs of touch. Far too near the village was the natural order, and the plants waved to represent scented power would beckon the air to be consulted. Reason originates now from a muddied Wissy river, afloat a useless evil boat. Farther, the cabins for work seekers, oil diggers, medical arrangers of future folic disuse. One church, one school, 3 bars, 2 nightly brothels, and 1 hotel indicate shelters as an excuse, still in use. The rubber man gushed. The depleted community abuse hued. Museum artifacts are subjected, thoughts afloat. I came to write an oral language and found the tongue sunk in contracted paper. Progress digitally grabbed while comforted writers scribble as literally wayward to forget from distance. So my writing was now replanning resistance. Good readers, trace out loud. Prove your reading in your rapid eye movement. Dreams take place before real time and heard vowels initiate worlds. It's only a dream's weaving. I cannot say where I span from. Storm into this story you're entering, re-adding the letter D for day. To know the path through pauses is to read in every sleep. And one more extract from this verse novel. The practice room. Visit to an engineered memory. The diaries in his travelogue points through a worn windsock the direction of the clouds and the mist. In the heat of a summer's day, a butterfly floats across a nameless street. Among urban furniture emerges a background. The ecumenical aeroplane lands on a strip of dust, makes ripples, sneaks in between the now, then, here. A woman with silken legs, after the rain, wades the current, but in an absence of momentum, she shrugs and creases the river. Not to look back, she is reborn into a conversation she could not untangle. So undone the ambience is a museum. Everything made extinct, kept and wrapping. Not to forget the earlobe, the future, shield. The writers have written to file and forsake. Cave remains are a clear mass showing cleavage or still exists just 4 seconds to 8 o'clock. It's now in time. I can no longer remind but remember resin, the mosquito nights, a spatial circumstance in a practice room, a little poem. The practice room, the butterfly document, reread. The diaries in his travel log translates through worn windsops the direction of the clouds and their whispered motion. In the background, detail after detail is worn by breath. The summer's day when a butterfly floats across a nameless street amid urban pores, a motorway of dust, reads perspiring lines ripple beyond a female's figured word. Bare thighs scrape the humidity's contour, silken legs. She weighs the liquid in an absence of momentum, shrugs and creases the river. Trail strays back, but she is reborn into a conversation that cannot be kept whole, and the fluid is lost in an ambience through a museum of text. Now the writers have written to file an attempt to forsake. Abandoned at a window, exact cave remains in time are a clear mass showing cleavage who still exists just 4 seconds to 8 o'clock, extinct, present, instinct. I can no longer recite to remember sacred resin and mosquito nights. Spatial circumstance in a dictionary room, a brief note circumstantial as a poem. A little poison as a clockwise pause. Have you got a prayer to permeate from door to room? Here, everything shows the function. One lost its purpose, control artifacts, soul gasps inside out, disintegrate to her touch conditioning the air. Okay. Now, I'll read another poem from, it's written in Catalan and in English. So, Hebrew. It's called the Lector de Núvols, and it means the cloud reader. And it has to do, from the author's point of view, it's a passive narration. From the character's point of view, is the arrival in one place. And it all happened when I used to live in Barcelona in a very old block of flats. And all block of flats in Barcelona have a very beautiful attic with a little shed. And because usually the elderly who live there, nobody goes at the very top to hang the clothes. So if you know that you can go all the way up, you can actually live there, with a little hut, beautiful view, incredible. And there is this man, and in the way you find characters, it was a Sunday, and it was this man from Gambia, and he had arrived in Barcelona. He was at the bus stop, but he was not waiting for anything. He was sitting using this urban furniture, and for me the sky was just the ceiling. It was not the sky. So I suddenly put them together. What about if he went to one of these flats, sneaked in at night time, went all the way out, but he could live there. So in this story, the cloud reader, because he's like the attic, he's looking at the sky. And of course he arrived with what's called a patera, which is a canoe, kind of a boat that they go from Morocco to Spain. So it's called the cloud reader. Every time I watch the sky, the waves, syllabic spume from retreating the word once. Far more, 1,000 times once. A puddle reflected a kind transparency here to a pond of sun narrow, the blue of nuance. The cloud drawing imaginable the clarity of the wind, is the end of the month's narration. Come once into somebody else's sky to hear the verb of some other. I say, come in, sit down by the smell of seaweed, but we cannot swim that way for time. Every vertical never, once, there was once, a moment of waves. And like now, from the attic needing words, a distant window reading a silent movie. I know the plane landed on the windowsill. I know what the clown said at the appeared circus in the common. We, the verbal matter, lowered the sky to ceiling in the curious determination of a choice. Once a day, soon the season of no commas. Once the season of no full stops. Soon the season of exclamation marks. Once the season of questions. Why the main square? The hands of the tower clock loom, overlap, copulate seconds, past midnight become a verb. There are no outdoors, one ceiling, in this geography of grimace. Insects on the tiles with letters, scurry. I must write to you in case something else shifts. But he's saying something doing something, and how he's saying something doing something. What can I do with the words? Once, the dream of clouds, mistaken then taken, petals and jobs, as I climb the steps, debris. Let's build from debris then, and reasons to open on Sundays. A good night kiss locks you out. I'll leave tonight. I'm losing weight to rise in a dream. Tight rope walk in present, tense between walls, repeatedly. A paperless poet, a plastic bag when shops are closed. In this unknowing, this that I have now. Thank you.